Raising whole humans without a hashtag, what Black single parents knew before the internet, told us how to parent. You know what we don't talk about enough? The fact that before parenting influencers existed, before Facebook groups became our therapists, before we could Google how to discipline a teenager at 2 in the morning, Black single parents were already doing the work, real work, the kind that didn't come with a like button, a comment section full of strangers second guessing your every move, or a viral reel showing you how to be a better parent in 60 seconds. I want to introduce you to someone who changed the way I think about parenting, resilience, and what it really takes to raise whole human beings in a world that constantly tells single parents they're not enough. Her name is Juanita Helm, and Juanita didn't just survive single parenthood in the pre social media era, she built something. She raised children who are now thriving, grounded, emotionally intelligent adults. And she did it without the luxury of crowdsourcing her parenting decisions or scrolling through threads about gentle discipline at midnight. Juanita represents a generation of Black parents who didn't have the option to ask the internet what to do when their kid came home with an attitude or when money was tight and choices were hard. They had to show up, they had to figure it out, they had to lean on the people physically around them. The ones who knew their names, their struggles, their kids' names, and weren't afraid to step in. And here's the thing, they didn't just survive, they raised children who became teachers, nurses, entrepreneurs, community leaders, parents themselves who carry forward the lessons learned in homes that didn't have Wi Fi but had wisdom. Juanita's impact on the world isn't measured in followers or viral moments. It's measured in the lives she shaped, the community she built, and the legacy she left behind. One that reminds us that presence, not perfection, is what changes everything. So today, I'm not here to romanticize the past or tell you that parenting was easier back then, because it wasn't. I'm here to share what Juanita and parents like her taught us, not as theory, not as inspiration without application, but as practical, grounded, research backed wisdom that you can use whether you're raising boys, girls, or both, whether you're doing it alone or with help, um, and whether you're drowning in social media noise or trying to find your way back to something real. Let's start here. Single parenting without social media required real world community and structure. And I mean required. It wasn't a nice to have, it wasn't optional, it was survival. Before Instagram mom communities, before parenting TikTok, before you could join a group chat and vent about your toddler's meltdown in the grocery store, Black single parents like Juanita relied on in person networks, family, church, neighbors, the woman down the street who would watch your kids for an hour while you ran to the store, the auntie who wasn't really your auntie but would correct your child in public and then call you later to let you know what happened and why. That was the system. And here's the thing, it worked. Sociologist Andrew Cherlin and his colleagues studied Black single mother families in low income neighborhoods during the 1990s and early 2000s, right before social media became the go to parenting resource. What they found was this: children who had strong extended family and community support had better school engagement and lower rates of behavioral problems, even in single parent homes. The research showed that family structure alone, whether you had one parent or two, was less predictive of a child's success than whether that child had a stable caregiver plus a supportive network around them. Let me say that again because it's important. It wasn't about whether there were two parents in the house. It was about whether the child had consistent, caring adults in their life who were paying attention, who showed up, who knew their name and their story. Juanita lived this. She didn't have a Facebook group to vent to when her son was acting out in school. She had her mother. She had the women at church who would pull her aside after service and say, I saw your boy at the store yesterday. He was respectful. You're doing a good job. She had neighbors who knew her kids' names and weren't afraid to tell them to sit down somewhere when they were getting out of line. And those people, they showed up, not because it was trendy, not because they were getting recognition or clout, but because that's what you did. You took care of each other's children because you understood that one parent, no matter how strong, could not do it all alone. And here's what we're missing today: we have access to thousands of parenting voices online. We can scroll through advice from certified experts, influencers, therapists, and well meaning strangers at any hour of the day. But how many of us have 3 to 5 trusted adults in our kids' lives who could step in if we needed them? How many of us are building that offline village intentionally, not just collecting followers or joining groups, but actually investing in real relationships with people who know our children's faces, voices, fears, and dreams? Because the research is clear. Strong offline support systems are directly tied to better outcomes for kids: better school performance, better mental health, better ability to navigate challenges and bounce back from setbacks. Online help is useful. Don't misunderstand me. But your kids still need you to build real life community around them. They need adults who know their names, who see them regularly, who can speak into their lives with authority and love, who can show up at a school play or a basketball game, or just be a safe person to talk to when things get hard. So here's your first takeaway: intentionally build an offline village for your kids. Make a short list of 3 to 5 trusted adults: family, neighbors, church members, teachers, coaches, mentors, and consciously involve them in your children's lives, not just for emergencies, for rides, for homework help, for mentorship, for being another safe adult your child can talk to when they don't want to talk to you, because they will have those moments. And when they do, you want them to have someone they trust who's not a stranger on the internet. Now, let's talk about boundaries, because this is where a lot of us are struggling right now. And it's where the pre social media generation had something figured out that we're in danger of losing. Clear boundaries, routines, and monitoring are non negotiable for raising boys and girls. And I know that sounds old school. I know some of you are thinking, but I want my kids to feel free. I don't want to be controlling. I want them to express themselves. And I hear you. But let me tell you what Juanita told me and what the data backs up. In the pre social media era, parents had fewer digital distractions to fight, but they still had to monitor TV, music, friends, and the street culture outside the door. They still had to know where their kids were, who they were with, what they were being exposed to, and what messages were shaping their view of themselves and the world. And they did it without parent portals, without Life 360, without being able to check their kid's phone or see their browser history. The Fragile Families and Child Well-Being Study followed nearly 5,000 children born in large US cities between 1998 and 2000, right before social media became widespread. A large share of those families were Black and headed by single mothers. And what the data showed was this: higher levels of parental monitoring and consistent discipline were associated with fewer behavior problems and better school readiness, regardless of whether the home had one parent or two. Let me break that down. What parents did: consistent involvement, clear rules, knowing what was going on in their kids' lives mattered at least as much as whether there were one or two parents in the home. The structure, the boundaries, the presence, that's what made the difference. Juanita didn't have a smartphone to track her kids, but she knew the parents of their friends. She knew what time they were supposed to be home, and if they were 5 minutes late, she was on the phone or at the door. She knew what they were watching on TV and what music they were listening to. And when something didn't sit right, when a song had lyrics that glorified violence or disrespect, when a friend seemed like a bad influence, She stepped in. She set limits. She said no. And she didn't apologize for it because here's the truth. Your kids don't need you to be their friend. They need you to be their parent. They need structure. They need to know that someone is paying attention, that someone cares enough to say, no, you're not going over there. No, you're not watching that. No, you're not staying out past curfew. And when they roll their eyes or slam the door or tell you that you're being unfair, you hold the line. Because years from now, they'll understand that the boundaries you set were the guardrails that kept them safe. And yes, that applies online too. For today's parents, it means you can't opt out of being in your kids' business offline or online. You have to know what apps they're on, you have to know who they're talking to, you have to set rules about screen time and stick to them. You have to be willing to check in, ask questions, and sometimes make the unpopular decision because it's the right one. So here's your second takeaway: tighten up boundaries and routines on and offline. Set clear, consistent rules about homework, bedtime, and screen time, and where your kids can go, with who and when. And don't apologize for being the parent. Your job is not to be liked. Your job is to raise whole, healthy, grounded human beings who know that love sometimes looks like a boundary. Now, here's the part that might make you feel something, because it's the part that made me sit back and really think about what we've lost in this age of Instagram perfect parenting and highlight reels that make everyone else's life look easier than ours. Your presence and resilience matter more than perfection. Single parents raising kids before social media didn't have the constant comparison pressure of perfect Instagram families. They didn't wake up every day seeing curated images of other parents who seemed to have it all together, whose kids were always smiling, whose homes were always clean, whose lives looked effortless. But they also didn't have as many visible role models or resources. They didn't have parenting podcasts or online courses or viral threads about gentle parenting techniques. They just had themselves, their faith, their community, and their commitment to show up day after day, even when it was hard, even when they were tired, even when they felt like they were failing. And the data is clear. What protects children most is a stable, emotionally attuned, present caregiver. Not a perfect one, not a two-parent one, but a committed one. A caregiver who shows up, who pays attention, who listens, who adapts, who keeps trying even when they make mistakes. Carol Stack's classic ethnography, All Our Kin, documented how Black single mothers and extended kin networks raised children collectively long before social media existed. Despite chronic poverty, housing instability, and systemic racism in employment, housing, and public systems, many of those children experience strong attachment to caregivers, consistent supervision, and a deep sense of belonging. The kin network functioned as a buffer against the stress carried by single parents. No one adult carried the weight alone. Kids might sleep at grandma's during the week to be closer to school, or split time between households depending on where stability and supervision were strongest at that moment. And it worked. It kept kids clothed, fed, supervised, loved, and socially integrated into a community that saw them and valued them. Juanita told me something that I'll never forget. She said, I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. There were days I lost my temper, days I didn't have the answers, days I felt like I was barely holding it together, but my kids always knew I was there. They knew I wasn't going anywhere. And that mattered more than anything else. Your consistency and willingness to keep showing up, even when it's hard, are the real game changers. Not your ability to make Pinterest worthy lunches, not your ability to never lose your temper, not your ability to look like you have it all together on social media. Your kids need to know you're present. They need to know you see them. They need to know that no matter what happens, no matter how hard things get, you're not going anywhere. So here's your third takeaway: show up consistently, not perfectly. Pick one small daily anchor with your kids. Dinner together, a nightly check in where you ask them about their day and actually listen, a morning ride to school where you talk about what's coming up and protect it. Guard that time like it's sacred because that presence, that consistent, reliable, loving presence is more powerful than trying to look like a perfect parent online. Let me bring this home because I want you to walk away from this talk with something you can actually use. Something that will shift the way you parent, the way you see yourself, and the way you build your life around your children. Juanita Helm is part of a generation of Black single parents who didn't have the luxury of viral parenting hacks, online support groups, or algorithms that served them advice at 3 in the morning. They had to build their village in real life. They had to set boundaries without apps or content filters. They had to show up every single day, imperfect and exhausted and sometimes uncertain, and trust that their presence was enough. And you know what? Their kids turned out more than okay. They turned out strong, resilient, grounded, and capable because those parents understood something we're in danger of forgetting. Parenting is not a performance. It's not content. It's not about looking good for an audience or getting validation from strangers. It's about showing up for your kids, building real community around them, setting clear boundaries that protect them, and being present even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when you feel like you're not enough. So if you're a single parent right now, or if you're co parenting, or if you're just trying to figure out how to raise good humans in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and overwhelming, here's what I need you to hear: you are enough. Your presence matters. Your consistency matters. Your willingness to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep loving your kids, even on the hard days, that's what makes the difference. Build an offline village, make the list. Reach out to those 3 to 5 trusted adults and ask them to be part of your kids' lives. Tighten up your boundaries, set the rules, hold the line, and show up consistently, not perfectly. Pick that one daily anchor and protect it with everything you have. And know that you are part of a long, resilient, powerful tradition of Black parents who have been doing this work with or without social media, with or without recognition, with or without applause. Juanita did it, countless others did it. And so can you. Now go build your village, go set your boundaries, go show up for your kids because they're watching, they're learning, and they need you. Not a perfect version of you, but the real, present, committed you. That's the parent who changes everything.